The five decided to take up the case of the Malaysian flight that's missing. So they're going to inject politics into it. That's unsurprising. And who are they going to blame? The only question is why it took them so long. 2 weeks into this thing, finally they figure out, must have been the Muslims. Take it away.
Is political correctness getting in the way of the missing plane investigation? Let me just jump to this very quickly. You have two pilots, pilot and co-pilot, both of whom are Muslims. Neither one of whom have been attached to any radical Islamic group so far. However, given the climate that we're living in, the climate of terrorism, and given this part of the world where this took place, it seemed to me to take a long time for them to begin to look into the backgrounds or whether they had any political radicalization in their backgrounds. Now, maybe this is going to be because people say, because I always seem to jump on the Muslims, but it would have been the first thing I would have asked.
Do our homework. We have to investigate. And investigate. By the way, there's a good chance a substantial population of the cabin passengers are Muslim as well. So you have to go through. You have to find out who has political ties. Extremist ties.
On the show, we talked about where are the dossiers about the pilots, because I don't think it's prejudice. It's just common sense in the world that we live in that you would have checked into the backgrounds. Maybe there's nothing there, but it does beg the question of whether we've soft-pedaled it up to now.
The investigation was led off by the Malaysians, who I think we can pretty much say with absolute certainty now have been wrong a lot in their information. If you look back to 1999 when Egypt air crashed, remember what the Egyptians told us? Oh, it was a mechanical failure, when in fact the pilot had yelled Allah Akbar before he crashed the plane into the ground. Now those were a lot of Americans on that flight.
All right, so they finally figured out, it turns out there's Muslims in Malaysia. You don't say, Bob Beckel and the rest of the crew. Wow, way to catch up on that. I was wondering where you were. Now look, first of all, they did look into the pilots. They have investigated that. And on this program, I immediately thought the most likely outcome was terrorism. Now, that's not necessarily the case, and we don't know that for a fact, but that was my first piece of speculation. And we immediately said last week, they should look into the pilots. But Fox News didn't think of that until they were like, oh, look, they're Muslims, of course. I love bowling. You got to investigate a lot of the passengers who are also Muslim. By the way, bowling, should we not investigate the passengers who are not Muslim? I would investigate everyone because it's an unbelievable mystery, right? I would do due diligence on all of it. Now, you want to know why the pilots were Muslim? Because Malaysia is 61.3% Muslim according to the last census. A majority of the country, a significant majority of the country is Muslim. That's why it's fairly likely that the pilots would have been Muslim. Now, let me tell you about some more notorious Muslims inside Malaysia. There's a guy by the name of Tuanku Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah. Oh my God. Now you gotta look into that guy. Let's do some homework on this. There's Muhammad Najib bin Abdul Najib Razak. And then there's Muhyiddin bin Muhammad Yassin. Who are these folks? The first guy is the king of Malaysia, the second guy is the prime minister of Malaysia, and the third guy is the deputy prime minister. Now, I don't think that the Malaysians looked around and were like, oh my God, why didn't somebody tell us the pilots were Muslim? Most of the country is Muslim. Now, of course, the idiots over at Fox News probably think that Islam is pretty much contained to the Middle East, but if you look at a map of the countries with the highest percentage of Muslims, you will see the highest percentages are the darker colors there, and look at Southeast Asia. And Indonesia, of course, the largest Muslim population in the world. Oh, wow, who would have guessed that? Certainly not the guys at Fox News. So if they had known that a couple of weeks ago, they would have gone to it immediately. They just got around to figuring out reality. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to a guy I almost never do, Greg Gutfeld, who actually stepped in at the end and said this.
I don't know. We have to be better than this, because when there was the Boston bombing, you had people alluding that it was the Tea Party because it was on April 15th. You had jerks on the left who were saying they were hoping it was a white supremacist group. I didn't even know these guys were Muslim, to be honest, and I don't know. I think this points to a frustration of the lack of transparency and why Americans, the American intelligence, should be taking charge of this. Mm-hmm. But I just don't. I don't feel comfortable saying, it's Muslims. Because I don't like it when they do it to the Tea Party. I don't like it when they do it to Sarah Palin. You know what I mean?
But they're just making a common sense point.
I love that. The last person to jump in. It's just a common sense point. If they're Muslim, obviously they're potential terrorists. So look, there's some things that Gutfeld said there that I don't agree with, but overall, I'll take it, man. Wow, a point of sanity on the 5 from Greg Gutfeld of all people. So credit where credit is due, but the rest of them, still morons.